Hi, I'm Erwin Lutzer. I want to introduce you to my book, We Will Not Be Silenced, Responding Courageously to Our Culture's Assault on Christianity. And I'm so glad that my friends at Christianbook.com have arranged for these Bible studies. They are free, they are online, and because the book has 10 chapters and we are going to be doing only 6 studies, for the most part, we are going to be doing 2 chapters at a time. So we're going to look at the contents of chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the book. What is it that I want you to see when you read these chapters? First of all, cultural Marxism. Of course, we hear that term often, but what does it mean? It is critical if we're going to understand this culture. Let me explain it this way. Classical Marxism, Karl Marx saw that the proletariat were being exploited by the bourgeoisie, so he said if the state took over everything, if you have state supremacy, the state could dole out all of the blessings and the benefits and do so equally. Now, that was a huge mistake for various reasons that will be explained later. But at the same time, what he saw was oppression as the key to history. He believed that there was always conflict between the oppressed and the oppressors. And of course, in his mind, the capitalists, they were the oppressors, and they were oppressing the poor and the workers. Just rid people of oppression, and everything will be okay. You won't even need laws because people will live righteously even without laws. How wrong can a person get? Well, when you think of it, classical Marxism destroyed Russia and China in those great revolutions, and millions were killed because, after all, the state had to become God, and you don't do that easily. Cultural Marxism is different. Cultural Marxism says we can become a Marxist state if we do it incrementally by capturing the culture. So what we need to do is to apply Marxism to such issues as the social structure, the political, education, the media, vote for the right people, and we can bring it in and people will love it because they will see its benefits. That is what is known as cultural Marxism. Now, of course, there are many reasons why it is that it has failed, but in chapter 1, How We Got Here, that's the title of the chapter. I want you to read that chapter very carefully, maybe even once or twice, until you grasp the implications of cultural Marxism. Now, of course, in this study, we're also doing the next chapter, which is chapter 2, and it has to do with history, specifically rewrite the past in order to control the future. Now, let's connect the dots here. Cultural Marxism says we have to apply cultural Marxism by changing the culture, and you don't change the culture unless you vilify the past. You know, there are many parents who ask themselves this question: why is it that when I send my child to university, why do they come back hating America? Well, to put it very succinctly, but I think somewhat accurately, the reason is because as Marxism is held out as the great utopia, the past needs to be vilified, and the idea is this, that America was begun by evil men with evil intentions. And even the Constitution and even our freedoms were actually written out, and they were done so with the idea of these men holding onto power. That's what is being taught. Now, when you stop to think of it, of course we know that slavery was terrible, absolutely terrible. We understand that, but is that all that can be said about America? What about the good? That often is downplayed. Let's take, for example, the 1619 Project, which says that America was actually begun with slavery and capitalism by exploiting the poor, etc. Have you ever noticed that even though America has many faults, and we certainly don't deny that, have you ever noticed that America is never compared with other countries? The reason is because it's difficult to get people to hate America if you compare America with other countries. For example, I point out in the book that there are still 40 million slaves in the world, primarily in India and Africa, absolutely awful. But when you compare America with other countries, it's very important for people to understand how far we have come. Now, the bottom line is this. As you read this chapter, ask yourself this question. How is history interpreted from a Marxist point of view to destroy our Judeo-Christian heritage? You know, in this chapter, I quote the words of Arthur Schlesinger, who was a confidant of President Kennedy. He said, "History is to a nation what memory is to a person." Now, if a person loses his memory, he becomes whatever people say he is. And there are people out there who want us to lose our collective memories of America's past. And on the other side of the revolution, there will be an end to white supremacy, an end to income inequality, and the Marxist utopia will be just around the corner. I also hope that you understand the globalism of cultural Marxism, and that, of course, is in the chapter. What do we do as Christians? Well, at the end of the chapter, I remind people that the Church of Jesus Christ was not built on the American Constitution, though the Constitution is a remarkable document. It was built on Christ. And my friends, today, we are going to have to relearn some of the lessons that those who have preceded us have had to learn, that even in the midst of a culture that may be becoming increasingly godless, we are called to stand for Christ at great personal cost. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you also anticipate the next study in the series, which is going to be Chapter 3, Using Diversity to Divide and to Destroy. Read it carefully, and read chapters 1 and 2 carefully as we see the connectedness of what is happening in our culture. I'll see you next time.